Right, let's get into it then. Welcome everyone to the How Secure is Your Microsoft 365 webinar. And I'd like to welcome you all and introduce our speakers. We've got Stephen Tomeko from Augment, and we've got Bill Lynham from Kinetics, as you well know. I'll just run through a few pieces of housekeeping before we kick off. We're going to have the microphones muted. So what I would ask you to do is if you've got any questions during the presentation, just ask them in the chat. Now, I'll review the chat as we go through the presentation this morning, and if we've got an opportunity to ask the questions that you've got, we'll answer them in the session. But don't worry if we don't get to them. We've got them recorded there at least, and we can follow up with you with those answers. So feel free to chat within Teams. The session will be recorded for after, and we'll make sure we share it with with the people on the call, and then you can share it with your team members as well. And we'll also post a copy of this presentation for your reference so that you can refer back. So that's about it for the housekeeping. I'm going to hand over to Stefan, and welcome Stefan, and over to you.
Perfect. Well, guys, thank you very much for attending today. As mentioned, my name is Stefan, and I manage the customer success team at Augment Technologies. Augment is a SaaS platform that allows us to secure business critical apps like Microsoft and gain visibility into other SaaS apps that might affect our security. And what we're here to talk about today is Microsoft Security Services. And if we just hop through a slide there, Bill, and to the next one there. One of the things you're probably asking yourself now is, don't we already do Microsoft security, and why are we talking about this again? And that's a very fair question. And the response to that really is that I think the last couple of years, if they've taught us anything, is that things are changing quite a lot with the advent of the global pandemic and the work from home movement and everybody moving to the cloud. We've seen a lot more people getting involved in cloud infrastructure in their business. However, we've also seen a massive spike in security incidences in that time. And the reason for that really being is that the cloud was built much like the network was before security was. So this massive infrastructure was put in place, everyone started adopting it, and then bad actors started looking for new and exciting ways to leverage that new infrastructure to take actions against people like ourselves. And as you can see in the charts here, ever since the beginning of the pandemic, we've seen a massive spike in the number of compromises, and we're starting to see them come in from new and exciting places in the world that we haven't seen before. So places in the developing world like Central and South America and Southeast Asia are starting to become hubs for bad actors because they now have decent access to the internet and they have trained individuals who have the know-how on how to breach people's environments. So what we've learned from that, if we hop across the slide, is that fundamentally the threat landscape we face has changed. I love this statistic. We got this from working with an MSP consultant down in LA. But since 2017, SaaS app breaches are up 775%. So as we move into the cloud, it's great. We're enabling ourselves to work. We're able to be really efficient and mobile. However, people are taking advantage of the fact that we're going online to subscribe to all these different services, and they're using those services to get our financial information, intellectual property, contact information, contracts, whatever they can do to leverage out of us, sometimes just for financial gain. But there's definitely this sort of clear and present danger currently to SaaS environments where more and more bad actors are taking the time to invest in new and exciting ways to get into our environments. Now, with that large increase, we can definitely attribute a large portion of that 775% to one single application. And if we knock over to the next slide there. And that application is Microsoft. Because for 95% of the users in the world, Microsoft is your most business critical application. It's where your intellectual property lives. It's where your contracts live. It's where all your contacts live. It's where all your correspondence with your clients lives. It's where all of your sensitive data lives. As a result, it is now the most targeted application in the world by all those bad actors. So of that 775% increase, a good whack of those compromises were coming from people breaching Microsoft accounts. So it's definitely time for us to relook at our Microsoft security, make sure we stay up to date with the new threats that we face in the landscape, and that we stay one step ahead of these bad actors. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is there such a spike in bad actors going after Microsoft? And if we just jump to the next slide, I can walk you through why the barriers to entry are so low. It used to be that, for a bad actor to gain access to your Microsoft environment, they had to put in a lot of legwork. Nowadays, things are a lot easier now that we're in the cloud. So if I was a bad actor today, I could go online and purchase 1,000 sets of Microsoft usernames and passwords for less than $1. I could run a script against an environment and see if I could breach any of those accounts for less than $1. If I wanted to buy in bulk, I could buy 400 million usernames and passwords, which is the whole population of the United States and Canada combined, for less than $150. So my barrier to entry to get those username and passwords was very low, $150. If your business makes more than $150, you could possibly be a target. And I think that, one of the things we have to move away from is imagining hackers as these little hooded guys in dark rooms coming after our businesses. That's not how hacking works these days. They have access to available information, which might be breached usernames and passwords, and that's what they're running against. They have no idea who they're attacking a lot of the time. They just have a list of possibly 400 million pairs that they're running against. So it's not that people are specifically coming after you. If they were to specifically come after you, though, spear phishing attacks are as cheap as $100 to $1,000 to go after specific corporate information. A lot of espionage and stuff would fall into that bucket. And if somebody really wanted to come after your device for a PC, we're talking 13 cents cost of breach. For a mobile device, just under $3. So if somebody did want to come after your device to get into your Microsoft account, barrier to entry is really low. Now, as some of you might be aware, one of the most common attacks against companies nowadays is ransomware. And ransomware is a very cheap piece of software to get your hands on. Right now on the dark web, ransomware kits are going for about $66. But there's something going on in the ransomware space which is kind of frightening and obviously a huge concern to us, which is that if I can't afford a $66 piece of ransomware, I can hold a rev share opportunity with the creator of that ransomware. I'll run the ransom against my target, and the creator of the software will take 30% of the ransom. Bearing in mind that we estimate that the average cost of a ransom is around $4 million, I just made 2 million dollars for $0 down, and exactly the same for the bad actor who created the software. So our cost to entry at this point is as low as $0 to try and run an attack against your account. So the size of your business and the cost of the infrastructure to stage an attack is no longer a factor. So this is why we're seeing such a spike in bad actors coming after our Microsoft environments. The barriers to entry are just really, really low. And if we jump up to the next slide, this is compounded by the fact that Microsoft isn't set up securely out of the box. In fact, they'll tell you in their own documentation that your username and password does provide a first level of defense, but in order to secure your Microsoft environment, you're going to have to dig into it deep. You're going to have to talk to Bill and really the security infrastructure inside Microsoft is so complex that it takes often a team to manage that for a company and make sure that all the settings are set correctly, specifically for our business. So we can't assume that anything we get from Microsoft is safe out of the box. Further to that, we can see in Microsoft's own documentation that none of the data in your Microsoft environment is backed up by Microsoft. They themselves recommend that we get third-party tools to do that backup because natively, I think they have a retention policy of about 90 days and they do data trimming in there. So just because you've saved your attachment to your emails does not mean that that file is backed up. It is definitely something that we need to look at and make sure that all the data that resides in our Microsoft environments are backed up just in case somebody gets through one of those security controls. So what's the good news? And if we skip one slide, the good news is this: we can protect against about 98% of these attacks by doing two simple things. The first thing is implementing least privileged access across our whole user base. And what that means is that only the right person has the right access to the right application at the right time. That way, we reduce our exposure and we make sure that only the right people are accessing the right information. And then for those people who are accessing that information, we want to enable MFA across the board. That's multi-factor authentication, which means that every time that right person does go for that information, they're challenged. And unless they give the correct response, they won't be able to access that data. Those two steps are some of the best things that we can do to prevent breaches in the first place from occurring. Now, to add to that, there's something that we can do behind the scenes in your Microsoft environment that'll help us prevent breaches, and it's super easy. So if we jump one slide across, we can see that preventing breaches in Microsoft is an easy three-step process. So the first step is to enforce MFA for our admin users and our users and our regular users across the board. If you click there might be an animation. There you go. The second thing we can do is reduce phishing attempts by making sure that we have mail forwarding rules and attachment protections set on our Microsoft accounts. So we can click into that again. Yep. And the third thing we can do there is anywhere we have a repository of IP or sensitive data like contracts, we want to make sure that we're reducing data breaches by making sure that we have sharing rules attached to those repositories and guest access rules. Again, that's that least privileged access step, making sure we only have the right people accessing the right data. So we can set up a strong security perimeter by implementing those 3 easy steps today. And to add to that, if anything does start to get through our 3 steps right there, we have the ability to monitor new threats that are coming. And if we skip to the next slide, as those threats appear in our environment, we can see them come into our Microsoft environment. We can make the call or automatically assign them a threat level and then directly take action as they happen. So we don't have to wait for any consolidation period. As soon as that new threat appears, we can move to take action as quickly as possible. So not only have we locked the doors there, we've got security cameras set up, and we can make sure that if anyone does get through the door, we know about it. Now, if bad actors are successful in breaching any of the security standards we do have, it's critical that we are backing up the data that we do have residing in Microsoft. So if we skip across to the next slide there. You know, as I said, if somebody does get through our security perimeters there, we're going to have to make sure that any data that they do touch, destroy, steal, we can get back. And so, you know, there are hundreds of reasons that we might need to restore a piece of data, but our backup is basically going to give us the ability to make sure that all that business critical information, if it is lost, at least we're able to retain an older version of that data or get back some of that data. So some of the reasons that you might want to focus on backing up all of your Microsoft stuff is human error, accidental deletion. I know I've done it. I've accidentally deleted a document or a contract I shouldn't have. You need to, if you work in a compliance industry that's, you know, healthcare, finance, legal services, you need to retain certain intellectual property for a certain amount of time, and that's a legal requirement. So you'll definitely need your backups for that. In case any of those bad actors get in, as we were saying before, we need to be able to recover that data. And there might be other issues, such as malicious insiders. Many of you may have experienced, you know, a disgruntled employee or two who want to leave and maybe want to take a contact list with them, or maybe want to take some other intellectual property of your business with them. So we definitely need that backup capability in case a malicious insider decides to delete their contact list and you know, try and strike out on their own. Other things we need backup for, the same stuff we've always needed for in case something blows up. Yeah, your laptop overheats, catches fire, what have you. We have all that data ready to back up and ready to go. And so that's sort of why we need to readdress how we're looking at Microsoft security and you know and how secure we think our Microsoft environments are. At this point, I'll hand over to Bill, who can talk you through a little bit of the details on what Kinetics can do to help secure your Microsoft environments in the face of these new threats.
Thank you, Stephen. That is really, I say, stunning how cheap the tools are for bad actors to have a
Yeah.
crack. And because they're so cheap, it means they can do this in such bulk that, and we do see this, the number of attempts that happen, even against ourselves on a daily basis, the phishing attempts, the scans of firewalls. Um, Yesterday I got a wonderful phone call from claiming to be from 1NZ, telling me that the service on my cell phone was going to expire and I needed to press 1 for English and 9 for Chinese, I think. So they're coming at us from all directions. Talk about easy, and yeah, the steps are easy, but as we all know on the receiving end of it all, actually dealing with MFA is hard. The interruption all the time. And the tools that we use from the likes of Augment help us put templates out there, but the tools that Microsoft give us, they change constantly, which is why we need somebody like Augment to help us with the templates. Here at Kinetics, we had a meeting last night, engineering meeting, looking at the latest tools that Microsoft is pushing out to help us manage MFA, because as MFA has become more common, ways to socially engineer us and to accepting an MFA request have become more common. And even there's some with some of the early ways that MFA was done, there's now ways to steal the token, basically the authentication that you've used, and reuse that. So protection therefore does need to be multi-layered. In our new plans, we've now AV, it's the pass, it's EDR everywhere. What's the difference between AED and EDR? Antivirus and EDR. Antivirus deals with a known thing. You've got a virus or you haven't. It's very black and white. It never goes, I think that's a virus. It either is or it isn't. But when it comes to being breached or a hack, that could be actually, maybe this is a problem. Maybe there's something going on here. So, and that could be drawn from 3 or 4 different activities that are taking place. And that's where EDR comes in, a lot more smarts. I know that we've got a few people on this call who are aware of a couple of major breaches that have taken place recently and being dealt with currently. I'm going to say not in Kinetics clients, elsewhere. But one of them, I understand, one of the problems is they were encrypted, a company here in New Zealand, and their backups were encrypted. So all our care clients that are using our care backups, we have been going around relatively recently. We've gone out and off of our own back. We have changed the software. We've now gone up to newer, better versions of software where your backups are automatically going off-site. Once that data is off-site, that is secure. Your servers can be encrypted. Your backups are still good because you need that data back. We include in our base plans the 365 monitoring, and that's where we make good use of Augment. They help us apply the policies to keep you current. They help us manage that those policies are in place, and give us alerts about activity. Because even with MFA in place, there's still other ways that stuff can be going on there. For example, why is there suddenly a lot of data being downloaded out of 365? And I can use a real world scenario. When we first started doing this, we actually had an engineer here at Kinetics that was leaving us, and we got alert to say this person is downloading a lot of files, right? So we were able to step in there and deal with that matter very quickly. No, we include web browser protection on your PCs. So that is before you go into a website, the DNS, you're called to say, give me the address of this website, is checked against a known list of bad websites, and it will block you from going there. Safe links and attachments, because with your phishing attempts, they're coming in all day long, every day. You need something, and I will say that I see a lot of cyber insurance forms. These days, they are very specific on a lot of them. Does your system sandbox attachments that come in through emails? Yes, we do. Active Directory privileges monitoring. When somebody gets inside of your system, one of the things they might attempt to do is create accounts and give themselves extra rights. Or Another problem that we'll have is existing users on a network might say, I demand, administrative rights, and we'll get an alert if somebody is added to those groups. We use, once again, Augment, we use them to help us track the SaaS IT. So one thing to protect yourself, but you need to protect your data. So where are your staff putting their data? There's lots of free tools out there on the internet to help us do our jobs, even cheap, and they might be paying for themselves. Are they using tools that you would expect people to be uploading confidential data into? So we can report and we alert on that. We do education. MFA set up in this, and tell you, as I was saying last night, we were meeting on this very subject here, a number of engineers, because only in the last few days Microsoft has released new tools with MFA that allows us to simplify the setup of a new user. So rather than have to go through and set up MFA multiple times, which is time consuming, we can have a temporary key that we're allowed to use for a while. New tools rather than blocking everything just to say, if you're in New Zealand, Australia, you're okay. Well, the world's opened up. We're traveling a lot more. But to allow us to be able to say, you're okay, you can log in, still got to use MFA, but that will now work for you if you're in Japan because you are doing it from your known device, and your known device is meeting this criteria of safety that we have set. And Augment help us manage that and manage those base policies across your tenancy. We do yearly reviews as well. Our new, I might be running my unupdated version of this deck. So the new Careful, our new Security Plus one takes all this to another level with our EDR product. It's now 24/7 threat hunting service. This is with the Security Plus. So that is literally follow the sun security experts that are monitoring what is going on all your endpoints within the EDR, looking for those patterns across your network. And when something is happening, there's not an alert going off that's going to wake up an engineer here at Kinetics at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, please make a good decision, right? It's actually these security experts, this is all they do. They're stepping in, they're protecting your system straight away. We bring that extra level also with Security Plus to your 365. So if activity is going on, people are going to react and respond straight away. We include your online backup. It's no longer with the Security Plus. It's not an extra you got to get. If you're on this plan, we are backing up your 365 and its data. We've got extra mail scrubbing services in there, protecting you for your incoming and outgoing email, and a password vault as well. Now, and this slide I have managed to correct. that's currently our current offerings. Now, if you've got any questions, we'll have a look in the chat in a moment. If not, feel free to reach out to your account manager. You can contact us on info. You can contact myself here at bill.lunam. And just before we check the chat, I'm going to do a plug. Some exciting news here. Next month, our webinar, we've actually got one of New Zealand's top cyber security investigators is going to join us, and we're going to have a conversation with him about real world scenarios of what is taking place out there. So this is a guy that if your system, so if you're Waikato Health, if you're Mercury IT, if you're the company right now that is dealing with ransomware, this is the guy that your insurance company calls in, not to fix the problem for you. His job is to go to and find out, what have these people discovered? How did they get into your system? How did they move around? What data has been leaked? And what backdoors have they put in? Because if they've been in your system, it's no good just restoring everything. Because they're straight back in. You're restoring their backdoors. So, Matt, do we have any?
Yeah, look, I think the truth is there's no questions in the chat at the moment because people are still shocked that with no money down, they can orchestrate a ransomware attack to get $2 million themselves and then outsource the cost of delivering that attack to the agent who's written the ransomware in the first place. So that's very scary stuff. So I'm not surprised you're stunned into silence. But if you do have any questions, please please post them in the chat. We'd be really happy to follow up with this. Oh, here's a question for Brian, actually. What form of MFA is recommended? The default option in M365 or third-party software package?
It's a great question.
It's as much about how you implement it. So I can tell you that I'm noticing now on some cyber insurance forms, and they get really cunning, right? There's the question: do you have MFA enforced across everything? And you go, yes, I do. But over in the glossary section, if you were to look and say, what's the definition of MFA, which I don't need to do because I know what it is. Suddenly in the glossary, they've got all these exclusions. So MFA is no longer getting a voice phone call, the automatic phone calls. On some of these are saying, no, that's not accepted. Text message is not accepted. So it's as much about, so all these, the third party, the Microsoft one, they are conceptually, they are all secure if they are well implemented. And that's the key, because one of the early phishing attempts for MFA, and was incredibly successful, is to just use time zones and have a look and go, well, I've got a password and I think it's correct and it's for Bill Lunham and he's in New Zealand, so I'm going to use it every 10 minutes starting at 3 a.m. because I'm pretty sure by the fourth one he's going to be rolling over to his cell phone again and going, accept the damn thing.
That's good. That's good, Bill. Any other questions? Does that answer your question, Brian?
I was waiting. Yes, that is what they call MFA fatigue.
100%.
Yeah.
And look, this is
good call,
why
Ron.
we were having a big discussion last night, is because in a way, if we get zero trust, which you will have heard about, actually means that you should get, in a way, more prompts. So that doesn't mean so MFA, of course, doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a prompt. It can be something you have. So we can include in that the fact that I have this trusted device that I'm on. So there's ways that we will be dealing with that. Because zero trust is changing how we handle that.
That's great. So if there's any, there's another one here.
So Nick, I will send you a URL. Just send me your credit card, and I'll get you that information straight back.
No problem. Getting a code rather than entering a prompt would be a better option. Yep, absolutely. And there's options for that, definitely. And it depends on how it's set up, as Bill has said. So look, everyone who's on the call, if you've been a bit scared about those things, you obviously want to make sure you're covered by the right level of support. And that includes for our existing clients, Care for Security as a minimum. And for our new clients and prospective clients and customers who've already signed up to it, our foundation package, which gives you that entry-level piece. Question there from Mehrdad. Does New Zealand law allow companies to enforce employees to have MFA authenticator on their personal cell phones?
I was going to answer that, but Stephen, I see
it's New Zealand, but yes, if they have a bring your own device policy, yes, they have the right to monitor what's going on your personal device.
Yeah.
As a company, you have the right to decide how you run your own company. That does mean you do need to be clear with your staff around what is going to happen, and they have a choice of doing it, or maybe they can't perform their duties. And that's a different conversation.
Yeah, good point. But the policy is one that you can enforce if it's actually something implemented within your business, Mehrdad. So good question. Nick has got a good one there around the proliferation of AI. Has there been any heightened risk because of the use of or the proliferation of AI in business?
It depends what side of the fence you're on there. I mean, I hear security guys going, "Hey, AI actually is going to be a bonus, a real bonus to us all, because it's going to help protect us." Undoubtedly, though, that's going to be an extra cost that all has to go somewhere. First of all, we need to deal with the privacy issues. You know, AI out of the box right now, ChatGPT, anything you're telling it, it now knows, and it will reshare that everywhere. So there's quite likely that you'll see there'll be a few AI seminars coming up from Kinetics in the near future. It is exciting. And if you haven't heard the stories, you know, there's a case of doctor in the US who put all his patient records into ChatGPT and asked it to then, for a patient to then write the letter for the medical insurance company. And I understand there's been many other cases like that as well.
Yeah,
certainly, well done. If it's done well and security and the privacy is taken care of, it should help. But bad guys are going to use it as well.
Good call. Look, I think we're at time now. Nick, I hope that answered your question. Please feel free to follow up on this. As Bill said, we're going to have a follow-up session on AI in particular in one of these webinars. So look forward to that. Thank you for your time, everyone. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Bill. Really insightful and interesting. And hope everyone's enjoyed the session. Be in contact with your account manager if you need further information.
Yeah. Join us all next month. Campbell will be very interesting.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
call.
Bill, if you could invite me to that too, I'd love to see that.
Okay, we'll do, Stephen.
Good stuff.
Hey,
all right.
thank you all. Thanks, Stephen.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.